In the last 5 minutes, the palace descended into chaos as royal aides hurriedly pulled curtains. The press was frozen in place, and Prince William was seen leaving a private room ashen-faced and visibly shaking. Whispers suggested the unfolding tragedy was tied not only to Prince Louis's health, but also to something deeply buried in Princess Diana's forgotten past, a secret powerful enough to silence Buckingham Palace itself. What began as a normal, controlled palace routine shattered without warning. Phones stopped ringing, doors slammed shut, and senior aides abandoned prepared statements mid-sentence, as if the words had suddenly become dangerous. Almost immediately, official royal social media accounts went unervingly quiet, scheduled posts vanished, and draft announcements were wiped clean, signaling not a delay but deliberate containment. Behind the palace walls, an emergency medical team was summoned with rare urgency, not for public optics, but for a child whose condition had apparently crossed an invisible threshold. Prince Louis, long shielded from public concern, became the center of a rapidly escalating crisis, and eyewitnesses described Prince William emerging from a secured room with a fractured composure the public had never seen, not the controlled grief of a future king, but the raw fear of a father, that he appeared to be confronting something he could neither command, negotiate, nor silence, his hands trembling, his eyes avoiding everyone around him, while Kate Middleton's absence only deepened the unease. There was no appearance, no reassurance, no carefully worded message, only whispered accounts that she was already with Louis, refusing to leave his side, ignoring protocol and advisors alike, choosing instinct over image in a moment that demanded it. As minutes passed, hushed emergency meetings unfolded behind closed doors, not ceremonial or routine, but urgent crisis sessions where lowered voices and hardened expressions revealed a collision of history, legacy, and survival. Files were reopened, names long avoided were spoken again, and what made the moment truly terrifying was the realization that this was not happening in isolation. Senior aides understood it immediately. Doctors seconds later, this was not just a sudden health scare, but the resurfacing of something that should have remained buried. As Louis's condition worsened, a long-dormant internal protocol was triggered, one unused since the late 1990s and tied to a woman whose shadow still looms over the monarchy, Princess Diana. Her name, unspoken for decades in certain corridors, returned quietly to the center of the conversation, not as memory or symbolism, but as evidence, as biology, as unfinished business. Those closest to the situation sensed it instantly. The past had caught up with the present, and secrets thought safely buried were pushing back to the surface, demanding acknowledgement. And as the palace worked desperately to control what the world would not yet be told, one truth became impossible to ignore. This was not merely a health crisis, but the culmination of a secret buried for decades, leading directly back to Diana's bloodline. More than a fashion icon or royal rebel, Diana was the keeper of a dangerous secret erased from official archives, yet preserved in a locked medical vault in Switzerland, where her DNA remained stored after a private consultation weeks before her death. The answer traced back to 1997, just before the fatal night in Paris, when Diana secretly traveled to Geneva under the alias Elizabeth C. Hart, avoiding hotels and public appearances, to meet a renowned geneticist whose name would later be redacted from every surviving document, a meeting driven not by curiosity, but by fear rooted in whispers, warnings, and something she claimed she had begun to feel within her own body. Something felt off, out of place, and it was never just about Diana herself. According to a private letter never meant to be seen, her growing concern centered on her sons. "They'll come for this," she wrote in shaky but unmistakable handwriting. "They'll come for this the moment I'm gone, because what's inside may change everything they've built." She enclosed the letter with a sealed vial of her blood, not for posterity or research, but for protection. That blood, specifically its DNA, was quietly preserved at a top-tier genetic facility in Switzerland under strict confidentiality, tagged, frozen, and buried beneath layers of pseudonyms, misdirection, and legal firewalls. No one was meant to find it, and for more than 2 decades, no one did until now. After her death, rumors swirled that the palace attempted to retrieve private medical files, widely assumed to be about privacy and image control, but the truth was more disturbing. Leaked confidential cables later suggested that within days of the crash, high-level British officials contacted Swiss authorities requesting the immediate return of all medical specimens related to Subject D, only to discover the vial had already been moved by someone loyal to Diana, who believed the monarchy was not entitled to every last part of her. Time passed, the story faded, and the file was sealed, But within that preserved strand and anomaly was discovered something that did not align with royal medical expectations. It was not a flaw or a disease, but something unknown, and it was classified under a highly restricted internal royal health designation, known only to a handful of senior advisors and physicians. Protocol level read a label that signified danger not just medically, but politically and dynastically, and above all, demanded absolute silence. No one dared to open that file again until Prince Louis's mysterious medical decline left doctors terrified, desperate, and out of options, forcing them to search archives they had long been warned never to touch. Only when a name they were instructed to forget appeared on diagnostic screens did Diana's DNA, long sealed away in frozen silence, become the only clue that might explain what was happening to the young prince. This sealed genetic warning remained untouched for decades, until Louis's sudden health crisis compelled doctors to revisit Diana's forgotten file. Behind the public smiles and official photos, Prince Louis had been quietly battling something far beyond a typical childhood illness or injury. Insiders now confirm that he exhibited symptoms defying standard diagnosis symptoms, eerily mirroring a genetic condition hinted at in Diana's encrypted medical records. It began subtly, small signs only a mother might notice, like persistent fatigue, trembling hands, and moments of uncharacteristic silence from a child usually full of energy. Kate was the first to notice. Staff were reassured not to worry, told it was likely a seasonal virus or a growth phase. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the unease deepened. Pediatric specialists were brought in one after another, some from inside the royal circle, others from discreet private clinics bound by strict confidentiality. Each left with more questions than answers, no clear diagnosis, no standard protocol, only anomalies, irregularities, and a growing conviction that something was terribly wrong. Even within the family, few were fully informed. George and Charlotte were shielded, Charles received only partial truths, and Camilla was told to remain calm and stay out of the matter. Only William and Kate bore the full weight of the crisis in silence. Then, under the glare of duty and image, the turning point came suddenly. A collapse not fainting or dizziness, but a full systemic failure that forced the royal medical team to break tradition and take unprecedented action. Full genome sequencing on a royal heir, a decision fraught with weighty implications. What the results revealed sent shockwaves through the palace's inner sanctum. Embedded within Louis's genetic profile was an unusual, unclassified strand that was not entirely unfamiliar. One that matched an anomaly long sealed within Diana's preserved DNA and flagged under undisclosed royal protocol level red. This genetic footprint was neither fully hereditary nor clearly understood, yet it hinted at a deeper and more complex lineage than anyone had dared acknowledge. Panic spread not only because of the mystery surrounding Louis's condition, but because it confirmed that whatever Diana feared and sought to protect in the Swiss vault was real, and now threatening the life of her grandson. This was no longer about a single child's health. It was about legacy, bloodline, and succession, as the truth buried in Diana's genes resurfaced in the youngest heir, raising questions the monarchy was unprepared to face. As doctors scrambled to decode Louis's condition, one name repeatedly appeared in Diana's medical notes, a figure long buried in controversy and vanished after 1997, the only man she confided in about her fears. Dr. Mark Vallance, a geneticist once accused of whistleblowing against a European monarchy. 27 years later, his identity resurfaced when Louis's DNA matched a genomic code only Vallance could have authored. Known in elite scientific circles as a pioneer in genomic patterning, he appeared in royal files only as Subject M. Diana had met him through a mutual acquaintance in Geneva, a woman who would later refuse to testify about Diana's final weeks, and Vallance became more than a consultant. He became her silent confidant and guardian, entrusted with her blood, notes, and questions she could ask no one within the royal system. After Diana's death, Vallance vanished, rumored to have fled under asylum or been silenced altogether. What is certain is that he left Geneva within hours of news of the crash. His lab was raided within 48 hours, his files destroyed, and his name erased from official records. Though Swiss authorities claimed he never existed, a single voicemail later surfaced, left on a secured UK line for Diana's personal solicitor, in which Vallance's trembling voice warned, "They know. If you're hearing this, she's gone. Protect the boy and the blood." Long dismissed as conspiracy, that message gained new weight when the now-retired solicitor came forward with a sealed envelope Diana had entrusted to him weeks before Paris. On the front of the envelope, written in Diana's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "For William, if anything happens to me," and for years the solicitor admitted he never delivered it, fearing what its contents might unleash. Now, with Lewis's condition deteriorating and the palace out of answers, the seal was finally broken to reveal 3 pages. A handwritten confession from Diana detailing her meetings with Valence, her doubts about her son's genetic protections, and a chilling line, "Something is inside us, and it doesn't belong to them." A second page listing a sequence of numbers, a genetic marker unknown to most laboratories at the time, but now identifiable within Prince Lewis's DNA, and a final page containing Valence's blunt analysis, stating, "This sequence is unnatural. It is either placed, or it evolved from something the Crown has never acknowledged." A cross-check of Lewis's genome with Valence's recovered research secretly retrieved by a rogue insider at the Swiss facility confirmed the impossible. The code in Lewis's DNA directly matched Diana's original sample, not as coincidence or resemblance, but as a continuation passed silently into the next generation. The resurfacing of Valence's name triggered alarms across multiple royal departments, raising urgent questions about what else he knew, what Diana may have entrusted to him, and who had worked so deliberately to erase him from history. Yet the deepest shock did not lie in the science itself, but in what this DNA implied about Diana's children and the forces that may have once moved against them, as long-whispered rumors of a genetic scandal capable of destabilizing royal succession resurfaced. With Prince Lewis's condition tearing open a cover-up rumored to stretch back to Charles's early marriage and long-buried secrets. Negotiations with foreign powers and long-buried deals now came back into question, raising unsettling doubts about who wanted this secret buried, and who might benefit if Lewis never recovered. Yet this story did not begin with Lewis, nor even with Diana. Deep within heavily redacted royal correspondence from the early 2000s lay documents marked Project Red L, which at first appeared to be little more than outdated medical archives and forgotten protocols. A closer reading, however, revealed a troubling pattern. Each document referenced Diana's blood, the safety of the heir, and a potential risk to the line of succession. These were not random memos, but warnings suggesting that someone within the monarchy had already understood the implications of what Diana feared. The scope of the response was vast following her death. A classified task force reportedly linked to British intelligence was formed with a single objective: contain the leak. That leak was not a journalist or a staff member, but genetic information that, if fully exposed, could have cast doubt not only on future heirs, but on past ones as well. The issue was never whether the bloodline was noble, but whose blood it truly was. What followed was a quiet yet sweeping purge. Laboratories audited, legal pressure applied in Switzerland, medical files destroyed or sealed under executive authority, and private physicians connected to Diana's final months reassigned or abruptly retired. The public never knew, because it was never meant to, but internally the language was stark references to foreign contamination and genetic threats to continuity. Amid this, there were hushed warnings as well. Camilla, still marginal within the inner circle at the time, was said to have voiced concerns to Charles about what lay within the boys. Remarks later recorded in a handwritten memo by a dismissed palace aide words that were not idle gossip, but rooted in something she had been shown or told. Something had been seen, something in Diana's medical reports, something in a letter she once tried to send to Charles but never reached him. Now, with Prince Lewis's diagnosis forcing these long-buried truths back into the open, the very system built to protect the monarchy was faltering. Legal teams were convened in secret chambers, asking impossible questions. What if the anomaly in Lewis's bloodline disqualifies him? What if Diana was right? What if her children were never meant to sit on the throne not because of scandal, but because of biology? Suddenly, every rule and royal protocol was up for debate. Parliament had not been briefed, yet contingency drafts were being drawn. Inside the palace, panic spread not over Lewis's health, but over what it meant. If Diana's DNA breaks tradition, every title, inheritance, and succession plan could collapse. Prince William faced a choice no heir should ever confront: protect the crown or protect his son. Sources reveal that in a private confrontation with King Charles, William uttered 4 words that shook the palace: "I choose my son." Trained from birth to uphold duty, restraint, and generational endurance, William was unprepared for the unraveling of his youngest child. In the privacy of royal apartments, behind doors concealing centuries of tradition, he stood face to face with his father and made a decision no heir had dared voice. Reports of the confrontation remain sealed, But leaks confirm William accused the palace of prioritizing image over innocence. The moment was raw, emotional, and explosive. For decades, father and son had moved in the shadows of Diana's memory, but now they stood divided. One clinging to the machinery of monarchy, the other cradling a child the institution refused to fully acknowledge. Kate, ever composed in public, had already broken in private. In a heartfelt handwritten letter to Charles, she pleaded for transparency. Louis is not a threat. He is your grandson. He is your blood. If we cannot speak the truth for him, then what are we protecting? The letter never received a direct reply, but exposed cracks within the palace. Camilla's strained relationship with William finally snapped. A high-ranking aide reported that she warned Charles, "William has inherited more of Diana than you realized, and it may destroy everything." Tension boiled into silence, rooms were avoided, dinners missed, and public unity maintained only through gritted smiles. The Crown could not contain the story forever. Despite media blackouts and legal threats, fragments leaked. An anonymous whistleblower, believed to be a dismissed physician, confirmed Louis's genetic anomaly, sparking questions across press rooms and parliaments. William, witnessing his son become a symbol of secrecy, began considering the unthinkable. Stepping back, not down, but away from the duty, appearances, and system that had failed his child. George and Charlotte were told simplified truths, but children sense tension long before they understand it. George grew quiet. Charlotte asked questions no one could answer. The family's fragile balance teetered between protection and fracture. William could no longer hide behind the Crown's cold serenity or prioritize the future while the present was tearing apart his child. And so, with the palace still scrambling to contain the storm, as William scrambled to draft damage control, a new piece of the past surfaced. A courier delivered a sealed envelope, yellowed by time, addressed in Diana's unmistakable handwriting meant for William and untouched for over 2 decades. In her final days, Diana had poured her soul into this message for her eldest son. One line read, "You will face a decision that no crown can guide you through." Now, with Louis's life hanging in the balance, William finally opened the envelope. What he discovered inside would forever change how he viewed the monarchy. The envelope had traveled with William through most of his adult life, discreetly passed from one trusted aide to another, always sealed in Diana's signature wax, never opened more legend than memory until this moment. With Louis's condition deteriorating and no cure or diagnosis in sight, William broke the seal out of desperation, not curiosity. Inside, Diana's words trembled on the page, yet her voice rang with clarity. She warned of secrets embedded not in policy or scandal, but in blood. "They will never accept what they cannot control," she wrote, "and what runs through you and possibly your children is beyond their reach." Diana revealed something William had never known. She had consulted a second geneticist beyond Dr. Valence, one even further removed from the royal network, because the truth she feared was too vast for any single institution. She spoke of a gene the royals would classify as dangerous not for illness, but for its unpredictability. "One of you," she wrote to her sons, "carries something that doesn't follow their rules, and that's what frightens them." She did not name Louis, she could not have known, but the implication was chilling. A quiet thread in the bloodline that the monarchy might one day try to erase. Yet beyond the science, it was the raw emotion in her words that struck William hardest. Diana wrote not as a princess, nor even merely as a mother, but as a woman desperate to protect the truth she could leave behind. "You will be asked to choose," she wrote. "Legacy or love, image or instinct. I hope when that time comes, you'll choose the child over the crown. Choose the truth, even if it burns everything they built." William read the letter over and over, his hands trembling. Every doubt he had suppressed surged forward. Every silence he had maintained for the sake of peace now felt like betrayal. The illusions of his youth, the fairy tale of the crown, the polished perfection of royal life all crumbled in his hands. In that moment, he was no longer heir or future king. He was simply a son who missed his mother, and a father terrified of losing his own child. He did not speak for hours. When Kate found him still clutching the letter, she did not ask questions, she only understood. She said nothing as she sat beside him, and the silence between them spoke volumes. Yet the past is not the only force haunting the present, because the final piece of the DNA puzzle has just emerged, and it could rewrite royal history. Hidden in the English countryside is a quiet young boy whose name has never been publicly mentioned, but whose DNA match is so precise that experts call it undeniable. He is linked to Diana, to Louis, and potentially to a legacy long denied. Could this forgotten heir carry the gene that Louis lacks and with it, the power to expose everything? The discovery began with a pattern, an encrypted set of genetic markers cross-referenced during Louis's emergency diagnostics. What was intended as a last-ditch effort to uncover answers instead triggered access to a file in Switzerland that had been inactive for nearly a decade. It belonged to a child born in 2014 under an alias, with a guardian listed not as a parent, but as a trust funded by an offshore account tied directly to Diana's former foundation. What made the connection impossible to ignore was the gene itself, the same mysterious anomaly that affected Louis. Yet in this child, it appeared inverted, strengthened, stabilized, and controlled a medical marvel by any standard. To royal physicians, however, it was a threat, because this child did not merely share a condition, he shared a heritage. Whispers confirmed that the boy had been raised in obscurity. His education was privately funded, his caretakers vetted through diplomatic intermediaries, and there were no photographs, no media coverage, and no paper trail until now. The sudden reactivation of his medical data triggered alarms across European legal systems, prompting a silent audit by the British Royal Legal Council, focusing on lineage implications, dynastic verification, and unacknowledged biological continuity. The connection to Diana became unmistakable when independent researchers found the child's genome matched a fragment taken during her final consultation, never officially logged. Labeled Specimen Omega, it had once been thought redundant, but now sits at the center of the most explosive potential royal scandal in modern history. No one has dared to name the boy publicly, but palace leaks suggest his guardian was a close associate of Diana, quietly dismissed after her death, yet never fully severed from her legacy. Protected by layers of legal insulation, this individual reportedly delivered the boy's genetic profile to a trusted third party in hopes of finding others like him. Instead, they found Prince Louis. Now the monarchy faces a critical question, not whether the boy exists, but what he represents. If the gene he carries is a stabilized version of Diana's anomaly, he is no longer just a medical curiosity, he could hold the key to a secret that challenges everything the royal family has built. The breakthrough was undeniable. The boy became an heir not by title, not by tradition, but by truth. A bloodline unfiltered by the monarchy's manipulation, a living symbol of what the crown had tried to erase. While the royal establishment braced for the fallout, an even more extraordinary revelation came from Louis himself. During a private hospital recording, he whispered a sentence no one expected, a sentence linking him directly to Diana, revealing a consciousness far beyond his years. It was part goodbye, part question, and part warning, and it might be the last the world ever hears from him in such clarity. Kate captured the moment not for history or the palace, but for herself, a mother's instinct to preserve fleeting clarity amid confusion and pain. Louis, drifting in and out of consciousness, spoke with soft urgency. "Mommy, who's the lady in blue that sings to me at night?" he asked. Kate froze. He continued, slower this time. She reassured him, saying he had her smile. Then he added something no one expected. "Tell William I forgive them." Louis did not understand the meaning, but everyone else did. Nurses exchanged glances, and when the recording was reviewed by the family's closest aides, a single name whispered through the corridors like a ghost returning home: Diana. No one had spoken her name to Louis in detail, yet here he was describing her the way she moved, sang, and watched over him. It was not imagination, it felt like memory. The emotional weight on William and Kate deepened in the following days. The distance between past and present collapsed. Diana was not merely a figure of history. She was woven into their son's blood, his dreams, his very being. William reportedly listened to the recording dozens of times alone, some saying he did not sleep for 3 days. Doctors quietly recommended that Louis be placed under long-term care in a protected facility with limited access. His condition had stabilized, but remained fragile, and any public scrutiny could trigger setbacks. The palace agreed, but with one stipulation: control the narrative. Preparations began for a final statement to the public. What emerged, however, was unlike the expected sterile press release. Insiders claim it was written by William himself, an unpolished, emotional note thanking the public for their prayers, requesting privacy, and ending with a single, haunting line: "He remembers her." With that whisper, everything changed. It was no longer merely science, scandal, or politics, it was a deeply personal, haunting truth. As this chapter of royal history closes, one thing is clear: the truth, once buried with Diana, is no longer silent.